Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Hondo Carpenter. I'm also your Sports Illustrated Las Vegas Raiders beat writer. It's great to have you here again. Now, as you know, John Shop has been with me for nearly 20 years, once a week. And we, in the words of what Max Crosby has now taught me, we chop it up. I cover the NFL microly, meaning Raider centric. He's macro. He's just a terrific journalist, a wonderful, successful attorney with his own firm in the Buckhead, Atlanta area of Georgia. And he comes on. We talk about legal issues. We talk about a lot. And John, we have so much to talk about today. But before we go anywhere, are you wearing a crawfish shirt?
I guarantee you, for the people out there that can see us, there's a lot that already know what this shirt comes from. This is a Kramer. This is a shirt Kramer made, famous in Seinfeld. It looks familiar to a lot of folks. I guarantee you they already know it. If you can't see this and hear it, they'll know. But yes, I've got a Kramer shirt on. It feels like the right way to kick off a summer season for the upper half of the country, if you will. So as we transition, wishing everybody a great Memorial Day and some good thought in what Memorial Day means, enjoying it on the enjoyment side. Why not start with a Kramer shirt? As folks probably know, we love Seinfeld a lot. I'm nearly a Seinfeld freak or borderline historian. This thing came up and I thought this makes sense for the summer, makes sense for this show as we do the OTA action that starts around this time of year.
I love it. So, John, good to have you again to everyone. Hope you had a good Memorial Day. John, before we get started, I want to dig in. I did an interview with Amy Trask, the former Raider CEO, and her revelation that went viral that Al Davis, who absolutely loved the Raiders at one point, was so frustrated with the financial struggles. And according to her testimony, to what she said, she told Al, no, we got to keep this for your wife and your son, Mark. I'll go find you the money. And she did. Bombshell. I'm going to tell you the truth. I was sitting next to her on the veranda of the hotel. And when she said it, I literally, my chin dropped. I never dreamt that Al Davis would have ever considered that. And I thought it was a phenomenal story that she told. I just would like to get your thoughts on it.
Well, it seemed to come as a pretty big surprise, which is a compliment to Amy Trask and the folks at the Raiders that whoever knew about that and kept it quiet. And also it talks about really, it frames the situation that Al Davis had with the state of California and multiple cities in a different light. You know, obviously moving from Oakland to Los Angeles back to Oakland, I can't remember if there are points in times that Fresno and other places he was looking for.
Were in play, yes. Others were in place.
Looking for something that worked. We just talked last week about how the city of Oakland is still paying on some renovation from 95. When I heard that, I thought to myself, well, one thing that stood out was, you know, this is somebody that was nearly the perfect employee in that they were there for the right reasons. They loved being there, started as an intern in law school, stayed throughout. Contrast that experience with some other people who maybe had a different relationship or treatment from Al Davis, maybe because they had one foot out the door all the time or he didn't think they were all in. I don't know. But, you know, we've heard Michael Lombardi talk about a different experience in his time, not necessarily all in a bad way, but a different experience, a different perspective. It made me think a little bit. I really wonder why there wasn't a serious consideration to really build a new facility in Oakland. And you start to wonder, what if they had built a new stadium in the late 90s? Would they still be there? When you look at the fact that the city's still paying for something, not really getting anything out of it all, when you look at the success that the Warriors have had with a new building, that's not in Oakland, but that's in the Bay Area, that was something else that came to mind. I was thinking, wow, I don't think that there was ever any idea that Al Davis was seriously considering having to part with the Raiders for those issues. That's why it's a story that's shook the ground a little bit. And hopefully over the summer, get into contact, or I'm sure you're already hearing from people around the league who maybe have say, oh, maybe I heard something or saw something that didn't make sense. Now it makes sense. Or other people that are just like, I can't believe that. It's a pretty wild story. And I think it's probably best for the NFL that it stayed in the Davis family. That I think is for sure, because who knows what would have happened had it gone otherwise. And
I think
obviously,
Mark's done a tremendous job with it.
yeah, and again, I'm looking from the outside. It looks to me like the Raiders have a home in Las Vegas. They have a great stadium, probably the best facility in the league right now if you listen to Andy Reid, and they've got an identity, they've got a future. They're not just the team for Las Vegas, they're really the team for that entire state, plus all the great fans from California. It feels to me like they're in the right spot for the long term. Man, that was a whopper of a story indeed.
So, John, I had an article that, depending on when people see this, you it posted at 9 Eastern, noon. At noon Eastern, 9 Pacific today, about Tom Brady. Now, I reached out to several people around the league because it keeps getting delayed, his potential ownership share in the Raiders, and was told by multiple people with multiple teams that there are two big concerns. One seems like it could be overcome, that there could be some give and take between the Raiders, the league, and all of it. And the other one, I was told there is, and everyone I talked to, no budging. The first is there's concern about Tom Brady being in the building, getting access, which the TV people do. And what if he's in there and, okay, he's not going to do Raider games, but he's in there for a Chief game and he's getting information, the concern that he could pass it to the Raiders if he were an owner. I think that's a legitimate concern. I think it's a legitimate concern. And then they said, well, if you just make it clear he can do no games with any team the Raiders will play or any Raider games, then you're narrowing it. They said they think there could be some play in it, but they don't know how much. Let's talk about that one first, then we'll get to the very big one. What do you think of that argument? I thought it was fascinating.
I don't think anybody with any significant ownership in any NFL team should be a broadcaster. I think you got to pick one or the other. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in reality, I think you got to pick one or the other. The reason I say significant is there's some potential avenues opening up, private equity, buying shares. You give a private equity firm, you can conceivably own a little bit. Not talking about that. I'm talking about real share. I don't think you have any business being in there. Now, I don't think it necessarily means a total divorce of Tom Brady and Fox. I'll give you an example. Maybe Tom Brady is at special events such as the Super Bowl, not necessarily calling the game, but active with Fox there, such as holiday games, maybe the season opener. I'm not sure it means nothing at all, but I do not like the idea of anybody owning any part of a team being cut out or limited. They can only call games with this division or that division. That probably fails the cost benefit analysis thing to me. Now, I have in my idea, my back of my head, what you're going to say that second one is. I'm gonna leave it here and listen to what it is, and we'll see if I do thumbs up, I got it right. If I do thumbs down, I was way off.
Well, so here's the other one, and it's the big one, is they don't believe that he is paying what the percentage of the Raiders he's getting is worth, thus causing there to be devaluing of a franchise, devalues everyone. And they said it this way: if Mark wants to give them, that's different. And they use the example: if my neighbor dies and gives his house to his son, I don't care. But if my neighbor dies and tries to sell it for half of what it's worth, it lowers the value of all of us. And because of how the league operates in parity and working together, I was told by every team, if he does not want to pay market value, If Mark doesn't want to charge market value, we're not going to approve it. And if Mark wants him to be an owner, give it to him. But then I think it runs into some problems with the other minority owners. Um, we'll see about that. But I would like your thought on that. I thought that was fascinating.
32 franchises, 32 different ownership groups and competitive interests, but a lot of them at the top of the sport, like Jerry Jones, very firm business interest. A lot of people will write history books saying Jerry Jones turned the business up in the NFL. Maybe he did a good bit. So I don't think that's unreasonable. My curiosity lies in the single digit percent chance that somebody might need Tom Brady to come back and play for them. Whatever the league does, they got to make sure they're not necessarily creating a path where you're going to start getting guys that just retired, have them be owners, and maybe they'll dip their toe back in and play. We know what J.J. Watt said a couple weeks ago. I take him at his word for it. He's not trying to buy any piece of the Texans. If Tom Brady is a partial owner of the Raiders, it's going to take about 45 seconds for people to say, what if somebody gets injured? What if Minshew gets injured and O'Connell gets injured? Dial the phone. I want to hear what you have to say. I mean, this is going to go.
He's already said that he would be interested in coming back. Now,
yeah.
When I asked the league people, because I thought that would be a big concern, it wasn't with any of them because they said if you're an owner, you can't play. So they said it's no concern because once you take ownership, you're giving up your career.
Well, and I wonder if that might, if I'm Tom Brady and there's any percent chance I might come back, let's just not mess with that yet. Just go ahead and do some TV and stay out of the Raiders business completely. If that book is totally closed, I'm with the owners on this one. I want a fair market value being paid for. I do not want to give a special discount to the most successful quarterback of all time. I don't think it's a great idea for the business. I understand that it could devalue around the division, around the conference, around the league. I actually would side with the owners on this one. And this is the thing, as great, big, and strong and Tom Brady is, he is not one of those 32 guys that owns the majority share of an NFL franchise. That is a whole different level. You got to play by their rules if you want to be in that game.
One executive said, we need Tom as a player. We don't need Tom as an owner. And it's the first time that in a long time that maybe he's learning the NFL doesn't need you.
No, it's been tremendous. You know, as somebody that was in school at the same time as Tom Brady, let's just reset the deck for folks here. It can't be said how unlikely this guy would go from where he was all the way to Michigan. The staff that recruits him is fired. One guy stays around, wants him to stick there. He sticks there, goes through what he did at Michigan, doesn't get benched, but he gets passed over by who's the highest recruited high school player in the country in two sports that didn't quite pan out. And that's just his college career. To go from where he was in 1997, 98, 99 to where he is now, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's also, frankly, a little hard to believe to me that he does not have multiple seasons of play in him. Maybe not for 18 games at the highest level. I don't know if he's got to scratch the rest of that itch away. Maybe we'll find out here in the coming months. If he wants to be in the ownership game, he ought to go full force into that and forget this TV thing. That'll be there down the road if he needs it. You can't be in everything at the same time. You can't have a foot in every single bucket as much as we'd like. And this is a reality check and a reality set by the NFL owners of, hey, there's a little bit of a different game here. You're not an employee of these franchises anymore. If you want to step on the other side of that line, it's a very different game, and you need to bring your checkbook.
I just thought it was funny. If Tom wants to be an owner, Mark can give it to him or he can pay what it's worth. And the guy goes, I don't see either one. So, all right, interesting. Let's keep going. I want to talk about the NCAA. I'm sure you saw this new settlement. John, you're an attorney. There's so many moving pieces to it. I'm going to be very frank and admit ignorance. I need you to bring some clarity to it. Would you please?
I got a lot of ignorance too, to be honest with you, because I find it relatively so disgusting. But what is apparently happening in real time is the college football relationship between college, university, and player, where you're offered a scholarship to play for that college. Those days are done. What it looks like is happening in real time is there's a new league of professional football that's going to be taking places at colleges and universities. And while right now the players on those teams are enrolled in classes, I don't know that that's going to be the case in a couple years. It looks like the NFL has another professional league underneath it that's growing out here. There's still a lot to shake out. But the
So
idea that,
schools are going to be, the way I understand it is schools are now going to be able to pay players.
it's what it sounds like. And without going into a huge big discussion, folks, we talked about this a lot around 2010, the early 2010s. And there were some of us, like myself, that thought maybe the way to deal with this is to change the language in the scholarships and pay the student athletes as employees of the school for revenue producing sports. I'll give you an example.
Which I support.
And you work on campus, in the cafeteria, in the maintenance and grounds, etc. You get an hourly wage. So when the basketball team is playing 2 games a week, you pay them during that. When the football team is playing, you pay them during that. So the scholarship is rewritten a different way. That ship sailed or didn't go anywhere. Now it looks like we're going to get into a situation where they're literally talking about salary caps for college football teams. So what we don't know is how are fans going to react to this. I don't think they're going to react very well overall. Let's take a look at how many butts are in the seats in college football games this year between October 1st and the end of the year. Other than your biggest games on the calendar, and there's literally hundreds on TV each week, I don't know how many people are going to support that. What's being done here in real time is a shift from college football as you knew it, dealing with scholarship for academic education, is flipping over to literally a professional sport where kids are going to get paid to play. How much and how this is all going to survive, I don't know. It is remarkable. I don't think anybody even 3 or 4 years ago quite saw this coming. And I'm not, no, let me guarantee this. Nobody knows where this is going from here. I just think, I think we're going to see the fans exit. If I want to watch professional football, I get the greatest league in the history of Earth for professional football called the NFL. That's what I'm going to watch.
So, John, as an attorney, though, to me, it seems so easy. You make them employees. So Shannon and I were having dinner with a very well-known college football coach recently, and we were talking about the state of college football. And he said, it's far worse, because I said, well, it's basically a professional league like the NFL. And he looked at me and goes, you're wrong. It is a professional league, but it's nothing like the NFL. With the Raiders, you sign a guy for 3 years, you got him for 3 years. We sign him for 1, and he can quit halfway through the year saying, well, I got another offer from another school. I'm entering the portal. I mean, he told me, this is his words. And I'll tell you, it was so funny because we get in the car and Shannon says to me, did he say what I think he said? Because that sounded like college football's dead. And he said to me, college football, he goes, Shannon, you'll appreciate this because you're a nurse. It's got 1 foot in the grave, 1 foot on a banana peel, and the guy's got the paddles trying to bring it back to life. College football is just about dead. Because when guys can quit in the middle of the season and be signed to somewhere else, he goes, at least give them contracts now and make them employees. So at least we know if we agree on something, I've got the kid for 3 years. Thoughts, John? I thought that was brilliant.
Got to have a two-way street. And hopefully that's just, they got to have a two-way street. We've seen it. We've just seen a suit filed out of an NIL deal gone wrong, dealing with a kid that thought he was going to Florida, had to go to Arizona State. Now he's at Georgia. Now he's suing people, including the coach at Florida. a zoo, free
We got
agency.
kids now, and I'm not blaming the kids, John.
No, of
This is
course
the
not.
adults' fault. But we got kids now in the recruiting process that are committing 3 and 4 times before they ever get on campus as a freshman.
Yeah, I mean it's completely out of control. Like a free agency with no salary cap and zigzag. People are zigzagging. We're going to see zigzagging as soon as October, early October. We'll see kids zigging and zagging out of here. It's garbage. It's absolute garbage. Of course, it's not the kid's fault. What in the world does a 17, 18, or 19-year-old know about any of this? They don't know anything other than what they've seen on TV. Whoever's running the sport, they lost it. It's out of hand.
So we're having dinner with this coach. And you may remember years ago, I broke the story years ago that it was coming where the Power Five schools were going to break away from the NCAA. And you may remember now, you'll know who I had dinner with because I told you who, when I broke that story, this person told me that. And we're sitting at dinner and talking about what's going on in the break that's coming. And he just said to me, and I thought this was brilliant. He said, so now everything is about getting in the playoff. Just like college basketball is about who's in the big dance. Doesn't matter if you win if you win your regular season, if you don't win the tournament. And he said to me, I don't care what school it is. He goes, I don't care if it's Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan State, or any of them. The moment you're out of the contention for the playoffs, your crowds just aren't coming. It's just, he told me, this is going to kill ticket sales. This is going to, and they're all relying on the money of TV. He goes, but everybody still relies on the money of all those people coming in on the weekend to watch a game. He just said this is his words, a circular firing squad, that we're watching college sports kill college sports.
So what it looks like, yeah, I'm paying real close attention to those crowds. Good luck, Chuck, getting people to fork over for this. It's not the kid's fault. This is way out of hand. It got out of hand quickly. I don't see it coming back in quickly. If somebody can put something together quickly, great. Recircling what you were talking about when we talked about like more than 10 years ago, I wish it had broken off then. It'd be in a lot better shape if it had broken off then with some of the people around it that might have put it on a foundation that made sense. Some businesses may have stopped that from happening. Now look what's going on. It's beyond belief.
It's happening, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later. All right, John. Now, for people who are listening saying, what does this have to do with NFL football? It has a lot. At this same dinner with this coach, he said, I think it makes the NFL better. And I had an NFL coach tell me at the combine, it's made the NFL better. And when I asked him why, he said, because you used to always have to guess, how is this guy going to change now that he has money? He goes, we know now. For the most part, we know now. We're seeing it. And again, this coach said, look at Caleb Williams. Look how he behaved when he got money. And a lot of teams didn't want Caleb Williams. Bears did, but a lot didn't. And do you think ultimately this makes the NFL a better product? I do, John. I think it's bad for college, and I love college, but I think it's better for the NFL. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I was trying to explain to people that, for example, kids are going to go to multiple schools. They're going to play quarterbacks in multiple systems, like Peyton Thorne, DJ Ungalungale, just for two examples. We know what Keon Coleman did. He told the Bills, hey, here, I went to Michigan State. I went to play somewhere else, two different systems. Absolutely. Prepares kids more for the NFL. You're going to know as an NFL team, this is a guy that can go from one system to another, maybe adapt from one thing to another, or this is a guy that slipped and fell on a banana peel. He had a contract. He didn't have a contract. He got sued by an outside business because of dispute that. That's a piece of news there. Or, somebody blew money on a sports car and drove it into the ocean, whatever. Absolutely. From an NFL evaluation standpoint, they get more factors and more columns to evaluate guys in. I think it gives them a better idea of what kind of professional and what kind of player they're getting. Yeah, absolutely. It gives the NFL a little bit of a jump start on some of the issues that would come about if a kid just goes to Nebraska for 4 years or 5 years, doesn't know anything else, and all of a sudden he's drafted by the Giants. I'm thinking Prince Amukamara, if I remember, and then he's got to go buy a used car. This is like a life experience to him. He's not even sure what's going on. That's one end of the scale. The other end is a guy highly recruited, went to a handful of places, played football at 2 different places, 2 high-profile programs, 1 spread program, 1 pro-style program. He's got money in the bank. He's already bought a used car, etc. That's a guy that's further along in his professional development. And yeah, it's easier and better for the NFL to make more predictable evaluation of what kind of player that guy we draft is going to be versus the guy that was only in one school at one point and one time.
Additionally, this coach told me, an NFL coach, not the one, a different one. He said to me, they're hearing about kids who are in massive legal troubles because they got all that NIL money and didn't pay taxes.
Yeah, I remember talking to Jim Harbaugh about that when this came up years ago. You know, what are some of the pitfalls? And he was absolutely right there. Is obviously way ahead of the curve because we like to stay ahead of the curve in a lot of our stuff. Just thinking about a kid going to Northwestern. You pay him to go to Northwestern, they got, or if you count their tuition, room, and board as compensation, that's a huge tax bill. The thing about right now is the problems that are out there right now, they are live. These are first impression. So yes, we're going to learn about somebody this year, next year, maybe the year after, that's got a massive tax issue with the IRS that came out of their NIL money, not reported, 1099, all kinds of that kind of trouble. They didn't withhold, they didn't pay in, they didn't pay quarterly. All that kind of stuff is absolutely true and real. The problem with this first 5 years or so is it's happening right now. It's first impression. These will not be and should not be concerns in 2028. The class of 2029 that's going to be in the NFL draft, this stuff's going to be old hat. It'll be taken care of. There shouldn't be these kind of concerns or problems. But I got my eyes and ears out almost every time I read the NFL feed scroll. Did somebody get busted for gambling? Did somebody get busted yet for a tax issue gone wrong that came from before they got in the NFL? The teams can do what they can. The agents can do what they can. The families can do what they can. As we've seen, unfortunately, from the Antonio Brown story this week, in the end of the day, the player, the business person, they got to take care of it, or trouble is potentially there.
Let's talk about well done, Pat.
Pat Mahomes. A lot of noise out of the graduation speech, of course, from Harrison Buckner. What I'm looking at is let's take a look and see how the Chiefs are handling it. Well, you saw Pat Mahomes talk about it earlier this week. I think you saw a textbook example of pretty much what to say in such a way that it's not disrespectful to anybody. It's also not backing down from, hey, I may see the world a totally different way. But what Pat Mahomes said and how he said it appears to have been done in a very professional manner that keeps the core of the Kansas City Football Chiefs franchise together. Anybody could have blown their stack and been like, this is crazy, or that's the greatest thing ever, whatever. It could have blown the franchise and the team apart. Let's just talk it straight. Kickers are relatively expendable. We all know that. They're also famously teased, the idiot kicker. Of course, a great Peyton Manning line. Here, the Chiefs have something they don't want to deal with in an offseason that's not going their way. They're getting escalating problems. You can imagine the noise inside of that building where Andy Reid's probably got to holler at some people. He shouldn't have to holler, but he does. How about Pat Mahomes turning the temperature down, saying, listen, this guy's been a good teammate. We all respect each other. Everyone's getting along. We're working to a common goal. I may not see the same thing that he does, but, you know, that's a great thing about America. Our team is a microcosm of it. I think Pat Mahomes did a really good job of handling it. May not seem like a huge deal nationally, huge deal in Kansas City, huge deal in Kansas City Chiefs, and a really big deal in football. There's no guarantee somebody handles this that well. If they handle it poorly, that's the kind of stuff that starts sending a franchise the wrong way.
John, I'm going to ask a legitimate question. If anyone thinks they know our politics, you and I have been close friends for many, many years. I think they would be mistaken. Personally, I think they would. But I don't want to get into politics. We never have on this show and never will. That's not why people tune in. But I always hear people say, man, I wish players would keep it real. Well, that means when a player says something you agree with or you disagree with, okay, you respect their ability to say it and to do whatever they want and they move on. I don't understand this cancel culture in a society that's built and foundationally stands for free speech. I don't want anybody who believes like Harrison Butker canceled, and I don't want anybody who thinks he's a jackass canceled. I just, it's not good for our country. And I'm, this is a sports show. I don't think it's good for athletes. We want athletes to feel free. Now, Michael Jordan, in my opinion, was the smartest. He said, hey, Republicans and Democrats buy shoes. And you never saw him get into any issue. I think that's smart for athletes or public figures. I don't get into politics because people don't tune into me for politics. But if somebody decides to do it, you're going to probably alienate somebody when you say something, which is fine. You take that risk. But at the other thing, canceling, it just makes it's so anti-American to me. It makes no sense. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. People can pretty easily vote or have an opinion on something. If they don't like what a Chiefs player said, they don't have to buy a Chiefs jersey or a Chiefs ticket or whatever, and that's totally fine. There's such a difference. I think sometimes it's hard for us to appreciate the difference. We used to have to go, I mean, I used to have to go, drive to be near a camera that could plug into anything. You'd have to go to the TV studio. I got 3 or 4 cameras within my arm's reach right now that you can throw up on the internet right away. That's totally different. So you have what seems to be a loud, oftentimes mass that sometimes turns out to be fake bots or just they're literally fake accounts. It's hard for people to sometimes know, is this pressure that we're feeling or not? We all can say it's disappointing sometimes when we've seen corporations just fold up like a tent instead of saying, we don't really care. That's fine to have an opinion, but we're not going to change anything. These pendulums swing back and forth. The Buckner thing, the interesting thing to me here so far is that this could have been a bigger deal, but the leaders of the Chiefs, especially Pat Mahomes, they handled it extremely well. And I don't know that we're always going to see that. So I take note and say, wow, you gotta take your hat off here. It's not been a good offseason so far in Kansas City. It seems like they're one more big issue away from having a problem there. And this one, boom, been handled by their leadership, by Mahomes, by Kelsey, and it's in the past. I'm very impressed with how that was handled. I think quarterbacks around the league, they know what's going on, and they probably saw it, and it may help somebody who's in a similar situation, not necessarily the same context with a speech that some people didn't like, but this is pretty well handled by Pat Mahomes.
I was stunned. That's not true. That's not true. I was pleasantly surprised on Bill Maher coming out just saying, okay, the guy has an opinion.
Let's just think about I think about this before my time, but the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, that some of the groups the Pirates had, the Oakland A's, where they were like fist fights in the dugout, and the Reggie Jackson there. Some folks out there know about those. The Yankees, all this stuff used to never get anywhere, used to never get out of a locker room. Now you have reporters, well, you said it in the locker room last year, baseball playoffs, said it in the locker room, so we printed it. It's just a different era and different time. And it is nice sometimes to have an older person or a younger person just reset the deck and say, hey, it's just 1 out of 53 opinions on that football team. Maybe it doesn't need to be the end of the world. I hate People don't like it. Give a little credit here to the Chiefs for handling this so far. It looks like they've handled it very well.
100% agree. How about another broke player and he has ties to the Raiders?
Not only ties to the Raiders, how about that Hard Knocks scene? How about the Hard Knocks wild card and then Antonio Brown goes to the high school football game, then he's standing on a car? This is a story we hate to see happen again. Antonio Brown files for bankruptcy despite a reported $80 million in NFL career earnings. We both covered Antonio Brown when he was a college player. There probably was a reason that he played college at Central Michigan and not some of the other places. It was not based on his talent. This is a story I don't like to see. I had a career as a financial planner before I went to law school. I had all those licenses, Series 7 and a bunch of other ones. They're now beyond dormant because I haven't used them in a long time. But you hate to see this story. This is a story that shouldn't happen with that kind of income. This needs to be used by the league. This needs to be used by the Raiders. This needs to be used by all the teams as another reminder of, let's make sure this doesn't happen. Forget being bad for the franchise or bad for the NFL. It's bad for people. It's not. There really is nearly no possible way that somebody that earns $80 million should be filing bankruptcy at this point. It's a disturbing story. It's amazing to think that we're seeing it in the 2020s, but it better be a warning to a couple thousand NFL players out there. Really be smart and learn some things about what to do with your money so you do not get stuck in a spot like this.
NIL to NFL to court. What is this legal issue?
We're talking about this. Marvin Harrison Jr., contract issue with Fanatics. Fanatics says, hey, we had a deal. You're breaching the deal. We're going to sue you. Again, this is some first impression type stuff. This is a story that will go for a little bit. I think it will go into discovery, and at some point, it'll be very clear which side has the upper hand, what basically the damages are, and then I imagine this will be settled out of court and be resolved. But there is a suit from an absolute name brand, Fanatics. Nearly everybody out there, I bet you 80% of the people out there have probably purchased something from Fanatics at some point in time. This is a big deal. Marvin Harrison is already a name, obviously a fourth pick overall for the Cardinals. They're saying, hey, we had a contract for a deal with our merchandise, and you have breached the contract. This is a big deal. I actually give a lot of credit for Fanatics. This is a first impression for them too. They are laying down the law saying, you make a deal with us, we're going to hold you to it. Let's see where the dust settles. Not a great start for Marvin Harrison business-wise. I don't like this at all. I'd rather something like this didn't happen.
So what's the issue, though? What are they suing over? Is he trying to do stuff with people other than Fanatics?
Yeah. I mean, he had a deal. Fanatics says you had a deal with us, and you signed it in May of 2023, and you owe us some money. We had a deal for some apparel. Harrison folks say we didn't have a deal. So what this also is an attempt to do, I believe, is to stop Harrison from pretty much selling or anything or going on his own until this is resolved. So it's not that it's a double-edged sword, but it's a suit for damages, but it also may be a little bit more of Fanatics trying to protect its space. Fanatics is a big deal, as people know, in the merchandise and apparel, and they're looking to get bigger and bigger. And this is a top 5 pick. This is not something that anybody wants to see, but we'll follow it, and we'll probably I bet you we'll have a resolution on it by November 1st. That's my guess.
All right, let's talk about Daniel Jones. Was he ever really a starter? I was very critical of the pick. Now he's flashing some anti-competitive signs for the G-men. Talk about it.
I'm not trying to pick on Daniel Jones. I just don't know that he was ever going to be a successful NFL starter. I don't think he was ever going to be an NFL successful starter. Not good for Daniel Jones last week to get into a discussion of not being so fired up that the Giants were considering taking a quarterback at some point in time. This is not the worst way of handling this of all time, but this is like 175 degrees from Pat Mahomes handling his situation so well. The nature of the NFL is competitive. I'm interested in whatever helps to make our team better. I'm looking forward to working with whoever is drafted by us. That's all you have to say. Kirk Cousins just did it. Other guys have done it. Listen to the guys at the Raiders. Oh, I'm not so excited about this. You don't want to get into that business, especially when you're Daniel Jones, coming off the injury situation he is, coming off to where he is, at a franchise that has practically pushed coaches off on a plank with bad quarterbacks before. The guy that's in there now is a sparky dude. Of course, he was a graduate assistant when I was in college under Nick Saban. Brian Dable knows what's going on, I think. He knows the history of the Giants franchise relative to quarterbacks. I don't think he's a big fan of this. And if this gets a little bit testy early in New York, I think Daniel Jones is getting the hook. This is not the way to approach this if you're Daniel Jones. You got to know better at this point in your career, not to step into it, not to say I was less than excited. You got to be able to handle it. And the fortunate thing for you, Jones, and everybody else is there's tape of Cousins and of other guys who can handle questions like this better. This should not be an issue for any other NFL quarterback this offseason when they're asked a similar question about their team drafting somebody. And as we've talked about on this show before, nearly every team is going to draft a quarterback every other year, at most every other year, as long as they have an extra spot on that roster. They would be foolish not to.
You think's a good weight for Lamar Jackson?
I think a good weight is, and this is one of the interesting parts of the NFL this time of year. What do these guys look like when they're coming in? I know you're looking at it when you're looking at the Raiders OTAs. I know other people are looking at what other players are coming in as. So you have Lamar Jackson. We've seen him come in bulked up. This week he's coming in leaned out, very, very lean. I think a good weight for Lamar Jackson is a weight with enough muscle and bulk to stay healthy as long as possible. I don't think you need any, fullback-sized quarterback. I'm with you there. I worry that a guy will be too thin or too slim to be able to take a hit and get up. Let's flash back another sport, the NBA, the biggest example of this. Do you remember when LeBron James cut out sugar and lost 1 million pounds and he stunk? And then he slowly gained it back and realized, whoop, that was too far. I'm curious if Lamar has been in contact with LeBron, talked about that experience. This is a significant transition for a guy at his size and his age. I like the idea of somewhere in the 200 teens. Anyone who listened to us knows I think size is a big deal with quarterbacks, and I think durability is a huge deal. So I admire
him at 220. I think 220, 225, 222 is perfect for him.
That's what 215 to 225 seems to be a sweet spot for a guy of his size. But look, this is a big deal. And if you saw the pictures this week, I know pictures have angles, but if I was the Ravens, I'd be like, let's talk about this. Let's make sure we're not going too thin, because if you go too thin, that might lead a durability issue. And the last thing that anybody needs at his point, at Lamar Jackson's point, this is the prime of his career. We do not want him getting derailed with the durability of being too small.
Let's talk about how many of the 53 players on a roster shake their head at a goofy quarterback.
Aaron Rodgers has done some amazing things on the football field. He has said some amazingly wacky things off the field. For those of us old enough to remember, I remember being red flagged when he had features by 60 Minutes, and he got a huge issue with the way 60 Minutes did the feature. And that's kind of strange. Now he's saying some wacky stuff this offseason. Some stuff that's reaching. Some stuff that is doesn't factually always add up. Without getting into that, the point is, what are you doing to the guys that you work with? What is that doing to help the chemistry of the Jets versus just shutting your mouth until you're done playing? I think the Jets are about to unravel. I think the string is going to be pulled, and this whole thing is the bucket's going to flip over and all the water's going to be spilled out. I think they're really close to having that happen. I sure hope it doesn't happen until the season gets started. I sure hope nobody wants to see it happen by injury in the first play again. But I think that sometimes Rodgers seems to not grasp as well as maybe some other quarterbacks we've talked about on the show here a few minutes ago, that there's 52 other guys on the team here. What am I doing and saying every day of the year I am employed? If I'm a team first guy, what am I doing and saying? Is it going to have a negative impact on the chemistry of the ball club. I don't care whether you're right or whether you're wrong, unless it's like, some, incredible, like a meteor is coming to hit, unless it's some kind of life or death thing. Why are we even having this much out there from this guy? There are 31 other quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't see any of them else climbing up there to say, hey, I got all this stuff to lay out and say out. I'm not saying he shouldn't. I'm just saying, has he considered the real life impact? Not the stuff that they're going to say in the press, not the stuff they're going to say in the media, maybe the stuff they're going to say around the league to some of their other friends. Like, I don't think this helps the Jets. That's all I'm saying. How is this going to help, Aaron?
Yeah, I have no problem with him giving his opinions like we talked about with Harrison. That's his decision. But the quarterback position, I had a very successful NFL quarterback tell me once, um, we were having a private conversation and politics came up. In fact, he brought it up, not me. And I asked him, are you planning on getting involved in the next election? And he said, no, because I want to get involved in politics, but not till I'm done playing. I go, oh, are you worried about endorsements or whatever? He goes, no, I don't want the other guys in this locker room to have to answer questions about my politics. He goes, in this building, I want it to be football. He goes, we can all talk our opinions privately, but in this building, it's all about winning. And he said, even though I think I probably wouldn't get criticized by the media, he said, there still would be people that would then ask them to take a stance like I would take a stance. And I don't want to do that because I know there's a lot of people in this locker room that don't agree with me politically. And I just think sometimes quarterbacks at different position. All right, as we get
That's what
ready to
I'm thinking.
go, I'm sorry,
That's what
what?
I'm thinking too. I'm not just. You hear the Buffalo quarterback saying a bunch of anything. You hear Geno Smith saying a bunch of anything. I just don't know why, and I can't. Robert Saleh doesn't have any hair left. Otherwise, it's got to be coming out of his head. This cannot be good for the Jets. It's a threat to the chemistry. We might as well lay it out there.
All right. So last question goes back to our first question. If you had to make a guess based upon what I told you about Tom Brady, I think the broadcasting one, they could maybe get over it, maybe, but either Mark's going to have to give him or he's going to have to pay full price. And then you got to figure out how does that work with the other minority owners. In your opinion, does Tom Brady at some point end up a part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders?
I think so. Yep. I think he's either got to put his foot back in and come back and play football, or I think the next move is a big one. He's going to pay the full freight, come in as an owner. I think that the transition, I think it is coming. Look, if he wants to play anymore, I'd rather see him play because he's phenomenal at what he does, whether he played for the Raiders or not, although that would be all right. He's phenomenal at what he does. He's a master at it. But he's also really prepared to be an owner. If I get a bet, my dollar bill, I'm betting that Tom Brady is officially an owner and not in broadcast sometime later this year.
Wow. Big prediction. John, tell them your social media handle.
I am on Twitter X at JP Spartan.
I am on IG at Hondo SR, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Hondo Carpenter. Make sure you're always checking out SI.com/NFL/Raiders for all of our coverage. We're doing 10 or more pieces of content every day. Check it out.